Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for November 30th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest film and TV news. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me in today's podcast is Slash Film Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
I was absent from yesterday's episode because we had some rainstorms in Southern California, and that power was out in my whole neck of the woods because apparently Hollywood has no infrastructure for weather of any kind. I don't understand how people on the East Coast I have water dripping from my ceiling into pots right now because I have a leak. So I don't know why people in California can't build houses that can withstand rain, whereas where I'm from Massachusetts, it was insane winters every winter and nothing. But anyways, okay. I've gone off on a rant. We have a lot of news to get to. Let's start off with some late breaking news, and that is that we have a new actor who has joined the Star Wars live action TV show, The Mandalorian. Ben, tell us about it.
Yes, three-time Oscar nominee Nick Nolte has joined the cast of The Mandalorian, the new show from Jon Favreau. And this is going to be airing on Disney Plus. And Nolte, of course, was the star of movies like 48 Hours and The Thin Red Line. And he was really, really great in this film called Warrior that not enough people have seen. It came out in 2011 or something like that. Seek that movie out if you've not seen it. Nolte is sort of like the prototypical grizzled tough guy. He's 77 years old right now, and we have no idea what character he's going to be playing in the show. But it's possible that he's going to be just providing a voice for a visual effects character, excuse me, or he could just be playing, a war-weary soldier, or the possibilities are pretty endless here, especially with what we were talking about recently, how Jon Favreau is going to be implementing some pretty VFX-heavy tech into this show. So I don't know. What do you guys think about Nolte joining the Star Wars universe?
Well, it's very interesting because this show has been filming for, I think, over a month now, and we're finally just getting these big names who are attached. But I think that's probably because, like you say, a lot of these characters might be under masks or under, VFX, and they might actually only be providing the voice or performance capture later on, I'm assuming. I don't know. I know I was at this Infinity War screening a couple days back. I meant to talk about it in yesterday's episode before the rain happened. And I wrote, or actually Chris wrote a rundown of all the stuff I learned from that Q&A. But one of the things was the Russo brothers were visiting the set of The Mandalorian. They did post a photo on Instagram. And someone asked them during the Q&A about that photo and visiting the set, and they said that the series is being shot in a way unlike any other TV show. So I'm assuming a lot of these characters, I'm assuming Nick Nolte is going to be some kind of weird alien creature that's performance capture or something. Chris, do you have any ideas?
I can't picture Nick Nolte putting on that performance capture suit. I can't picture someone being Nick Nolte, put this leotard on with all these dots all over it. I just picture him being I'm not putting that on. So,
well, they'll just videotape him and translate it. They'll just have artists translate it to the character.
I guess. I mean, I would rather if it was actually him being in it as some old
grizzled
general. I keep picturing him in The Thin Red Line, where I think he gives one of his best performances of this really weary, washed up military man who he's basically kissed butt his whole career to get up in the ranks, and he still hasn't gone anywhere, and he's just miserable. And I'm just picturing someone like that in the Star Wars universe, and I would love to see something like that.
It's also interesting because I think Nolte originally auditioned for the role of Han Solo in the original Star Wars movie. And so maybe this could be, I mean, it's kind of a cool full circle thing that he's joining the Star Wars universe now, but maybe they could, I don't know, play on that history a little bit and have him be like an old smuggler who's like not quite Han Solo, but like a Han Solo type or something. I don't know. They could lean into that if they wanted to.
That would actually be pretty cool. The Hollywood Reporter article that this comes from also noted that they don't know how many episodes any of these actors are appearing in. They don't know if Nick Nolte's role is like, a lead throughout the series or if he just appears as a guest star in one episode. So we really know nothing about this until Disney releases some more information. But I did mention that Q&A with the Russo brothers. I am going to link in the show notes because there was a ton of cool info about Infinity War that was revealed during that question and answer session with the two directors. It's not really anything that's like hugely newsworthy, but I think anybody that's a fan of Marvel and who saw Infinity War is going to love all this information. Like, they sat down for 2 hours and they answered a lot of nerdy questions. But speaking of the Russo brothers, elsewhere, they have kind of clued us in that Chris Evans may not be done with Captain America just yet. Chris, what do we know?
So a little while ago, Chris Evans took to Twitter to announce that he was done with Captain America. I mean, he didn't
say that. He had like an emotional kind of goodbye.
Yeah, you didn't let me get to it, Peter. I was getting to it. So he didn't flat out say, I'm done playing it, but it really sounded like he was saying, I'm done. And everyone took that to mean, oh, wow, this is the end of Chris Evans as Captain America. His contract is technically up, so it's very likely. But the Russo brothers said, quote, I think it was more emotional for him than it was us because he's not done yet. I won't explain what that means, but fans will soon understand what I'm talking about. So that's very vague and cryptic, and it could mean a million things. But in the past, Evans has actually said he would like to get into directing, not just acting. So maybe he's directing some sort of Marvel film. I don't know. I can't imagine him directing it and not appearing in it, so I don't really know how that would work, but that's where we are right now.
Well, he could still appear through flashbacks, or there's always my crazy conspiracy theory of an idea that Avengers 4 will return him in time with Peggy Carter, which I guess would cause all sorts of time travel ripples and problems with this universe. But it's comic book, so who cares? But Ben, what do you think?
I have not seen Chris Evans' directorial debut. It's a small indie that he made a few years ago. I remember seeing the trailer and being really interested in it. I need to add that to my queue because I think it somehow vanished from there. But I'm curious to see what kind of a filmmaker he is. He's had a long career, and I mean, he's not super old, but he's worked with some decent people. So I'm curious to see what he does. And the idea of Marvel giving him a full movie strikes me as a little much, a little quickly, but I guess crazier things have happened.
I mean, they do have a long relationship with him. It's like when you are aligning yourself with a filmmaker, it's kind of, it's more of a knowing how they're going to work with you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, he certainly has an understanding of like the infrastructure of Marvel and the way that the apparatus works and all of that kind of stuff. It just, I don't know. I'm wondering if this is going to be something like so far removed from what we're speculating right now. Like it easily could be like Chris Evans reprises his role as Captain America in a Super Bowl commercial or something like that, where he's like, fans are going to figure it out soon. And it's just like some completely asinine thing that has like no bearing on the MCU whatsoever. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see, I guess.
At the Q&A, the Russo brothers also said that if there is a Bucky and Winter Soldier TV series, which we reported is coming to Disney streaming, but it hasn't been confirmed by the Mouse House, that they are not involved in that show. So I'm wondering, could Chris Evans be directing that? I don't know. Like, I feel like that would maybe be tougher because then he's having to kind of direct these people that he kind of like starred alongside. It's kind of, have you ever had a job where you were promoted and then you had to kind of like wrangle in the people that you were kind of friendly with
Yeah, but people like John Krasinski and actually, I'm not 100% sure if he directed episodes of The Office, but a lot of cast members of The Office over the years ended up directing episodes of that show, and I feel like that's a fairly common thing with long-running TV shows where people will have aspirations to direct, and they'll be given the opportunity to direct the show that they're on, so they're like acting in it and directing their own coworkers. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility.
Didn't John Hamm and the other guy from Mad Men direct episodes?
Oh, John Slattery?
Yeah, yes, correct. I believe both of them directed episodes of Mad Men. I could be wrong, but yes. Anyways, let's move on to another Disney property. Mary Poppins Returns had its world premiere last night. I was there. Ben, you saw it earlier at a critic screening. So all the early buzz hit the web last night after the screening. That was when the embargo broke. What do people think of the Mary Poppins sequel?
As expected, people love this movie. There's so many people calling it delightful, saying that it's packed with old school charm. It keeps you smiling. People are comparing it to the equivalent of a cinematic hug. There's tons of praise for Emily Blunt's performance, stepping in for Julie Andrews in the role of Mary Poppins. Somebody says that Silas Lesnick, formerly from Coming Soon, said it anticipates and miraculously evades any cynicism and leaves you in a state of joy. So many people are basically like comparing this movie to like a therapy session, like a thing that they didn't know that they needed, but they feel so much better about life after they walk into this and then experience this glory on screen and then walk out. I have to say, though, that I saw this movie a little while ago, and this movie was just not for me. I think, Peter, weirdly, you and I and Yolanda Machado are the three people on the entire internet that I found last night scouring these reactions as they were coming in who did not love this movie. And I don't know, I feel like... all right, I'll just pass the ball to you here. What did you think about this film?
I think I'm beginning to realize that I might just not like Rob Marshall as a director. I'm just not into his kind of very stagey musical performances. I know this film is crowd pleasing. I saw it at the world premiere and people are clapping and laughing. People seem to be really into it. Maybe we are just the curmudgeons here. I don't know. It felt very paint by numbers. Like, the whole plot of the movie, I figured it out in the first 15 minutes of the movie, and then the movie goes on for 2 hours, and every time a new song starts, I was just kind of checking my watch, when is this gonna end? Yeah. I don't know. It has great production design. The music is good. I like Lynn. I like Blunt. There's some moments with her that are there are some great moments, but otherwise I felt it was very missing the magic and the greatness. Yeah. So
yeah, I just for me, the music is the big thing, and the music in the first Mary Poppins movie is iconic, and all of those songs are so great. And this movie has tons of music in it, but none of the songs struck me as being particularly good or memorable. And I really don't think it's just because I've heard the ones from the original Mary Poppins a million times. I think they're objectively not as good. And that's a big part when the movie breaks into, it basically pauses to break into a song and dance number every few minutes. If the music isn't there, that's going to be a big thing. But I don't know. Again, we're very much in the minority here, and I'm sure everybody listening to this is probably going to love it. So fear not, people, if you're really looking forward to this movie. I think the odds are in your favor on this one.
I will say this, after I did tweet out my response, I did get a bunch of responses from critics who have seen this that also agreed with us, Ben. So it's it's not just us three alone. It maybe was us three when the embargo broke, but it does seem they overwhelmingly people are enjoying this film, and I'm really actually curious what our resident curmudgeon, Chris Evangelista, will think of this movie.
I don't know when I'm going to see it, because I didn't go to my screening because someone else is reviewing it for us. So I don't know. I don't know if my wife wants to see this or not. So if she does, maybe we'll go around Christmas. But it's not exactly something I'm jumping to see. I don't really have much of a connection with Mary Poppins. I don't. care about it that much. I mean, I like Emily Blunt, I like Lin-Manuel Miranda, but I don't know. I don't know how much I want to see this.
I do want to ask one last thing, Ben. What is your relationship with Rob Marshall's other films? Like, do you think it's like just a taste thing? I feel like for me, I just feel like it's a taste thing of like, I just don't like how he shoots. I just don't like his films.
Yeah, I'm not a big Rob Marshall fan. I mean, he directed Chicago. That was like his first big feature, and he won, that movie won Oscars back in the early 2000s. And he's also done like Memoirs of a Geisha, but recently he's become more of a Disney guy. He directed Into the Woods most recently, and Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, which I thought was pretty bad. So, I mean, and I wasn't a big fan of Into the Woods either, although that movie too has its moments, but largely because of the performances. And I enjoyed Emily Blunt in this movie, but I feel like you're right, Peter. I feel like Rob Marshall is more of a choreographer than a director. He stages things, and it just feels, I don't know, I'm not able to get sucked away into the worlds that he creates like other people are.
Yeah. And one last thing. To me, it felt kind of like almost like a fan film, a fan sequel, but with like,
much.
Great people. Like it felt like everything that you worry about would happen with like like when they announced Creed as a Rocky sequel. Like this has every one of my worries, just the way they handle things. But okay. Anyways, I'll stop talking about this. I'm curious to hear what the other Slash Film staff think about this movie when they eventually see it. We'll probably hear about that in the water cooler. Let's talk about some other news that broke over the night, and that is that Netflix has canceled Daredevil. This is something that we didn't expect. Chris, what do we know?
Yes, Netflix has been slowly pulling the plug on their Marvel shows. Luke Cage, Iron Fist was canceled first, then Luke Cage, and now Daredevil has been canceled after 3 seasons, leaving only Jessica Jones and The Punisher as the only 2 remaining shows that belong to Marvel and Netflix right now. In the statement, they said that there are possible future projects for the character, and that could mean anything. It could mean, Netflix in Jessica Jones or Punisher, or it could mean Disney Plus. But as for now, the Daredevil series itself that appeared on Netflix is over and done with.
This is so weird because when Disney announced their streaming service, actually a couple months back, I believe one of the executives at Netflix basically was on record saying that we are happy with the performance of these shows, and that it's within our like responsibility if we want to cancel these or not. Saying that basically Disney does not, call the shots on that one. And then 3 months later, 3 of the shows have been canceled, including Daredevil, which I think is overwhelmingly the fan favorite and critically acclaimed. Ben, you wrote an article on the site basically trying to round up what we know about the future of Daredevil, and can these canceled Netflix Marvel shows continue on Disney Plus, or is that not possible?
So there's a lot of sort of weeds to get through here, but we know that Marvel is going to let its current deal with Netflix expire in 2019, and we know that Disney Plus, the new streaming service, is going to be in direct competition with Netflix when that debuts in the late 2019 as well. So there are a lot of factors to take into consideration here, but one of the things is that Alan Sepinwall, who's a veteran TV journalist who's been covering the TV industry for a long, long time, said recently that the executives at Disney have said, or at Marvel have said, that they don't want these Netflix shows on Disney Plus, and even if they did, the nature of the contracts would make it virtually impossible. So he's talking about Kevin Feige and the team at Marvel Studios are going to be the ones who are producing these new live-action Marvel shows for Disney Plus, while the shows like Daredevil and Luke Cage and stuff like that were produced under Marvel TV, which is a separate division of Marvel Entertainment. It's run by Jeff Loeb, and it's sort of under Ike Perlmutter's jurisdiction still, the leader of Marvel Entertainment. So there is a division in the company there, and Sepinwall speculates that if the Disney people, if Marvel Studios people rather, want to continue the Daredevil story, they could make a new show a few years down the line if they wanted to, but they just don't want to. And if they did, they would basically be starting over from scratch and recasting the show from the ground up. So it is possible that these things could end up on Disney Plus. We've actually heard some rumblings from some of the stars of the canceled Netflix shows who believe that their shows are going to be saved by Disney Plus, but it's very possible that that's just wishful thinking on their part. And
well, one of the big problems is Disney Plus is going to be family friendly, and these Netflix shows are like TVMA, right?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that, one of the options that I break down in this article is that Daredevil might end up on Hulu because Disney is going to own a majority of Hulu as soon as the acquisition of 21st Century Fox's assets go through at the beginning of next year. And a new report today actually said that AT&T is considering selling its 10% stake in Hulu, and that would give Disney even more control over that. And recently, Bob Iger was talking about, the CEO of Disney, was talking about how he wanted to invest more in Hulu and increase its programming. So theoretically, putting shows like Daredevil on Hulu would, be the solution for all of those things. It would be a way for them to invest and give Hulu more shows while also keeping these darker and grittier Marvel shows that are a little bit more violent than the typical stuff that you would normally associate with the Disney brand, keeping that separate from the stuff that's going to be on Disney Plus. So, I mean, we don't have any hard answers right now, but that's a lot of what we've been sort of digging through in terms of looking through options of what could happen for the future of Daredevil.
This just seems so weird because, like, that Netflix quote from the executive basically saying that they're happy with the performance of these shows and that, it's up to them to decide when they want to cancel them. And, like, there's that tweet from the producer of Daredevil who said that he was, like, looking at a board with the next season of Daredevil all plotted out. They had it planned. It was, like, a sudden kind of decision. I'm kind of wondering what is behind this. Like, is this Netflix deciding that they don't want to support a property that is going to be in their competition? Like, they don't want to support Marvel? Or was Disney making it hard for Netflix? Because I know, they are co-producing those shows. And I think with one of the shows, like Luke Cage or something, it was mentioned that, like, Marvel was not happy with the creative, what they were coming up with the creative future of that show. So maybe it's just Disney is kind of trying to, in no other better terms, cockblock Netflix with these Marvel shows, contraction in a weirdly creative, contractual way.
Yeah. I mean, it's also possible, too, that Netflix is just really concentrating on investing in their own original shows that they produce in-house, which is becoming increasingly important to them. They don't want to license this stuff from other production companies. They like to try to do things as much as they can all themselves, so they own all of it in perpetuity forever. So, and they've opened a new, or at least have talked about plans of opening a new production facility in New Mexico. We talked about that not too long ago. I think today, Peter, you just shared a link with us in the Slash Film Slack about how they're talking with people at Pinewood Studios in the UK about locking down some studio space there. So, it could just be that Netflix's priorities are shifting away from, they know that this deal is going to lapse in 2019 anyway. So maybe they're just trying to cut ties early and put their concentration on things that are actually going to work out for them in the long run. I don't know.
Yeah, and they also, as you mentioned, they don't have full ownership in these shows. So, like, all the, Daredevil merchandising and stuff, I'm sure goes to Marvel and Disney. Like, they just bought Mark Millar's Miller World a couple years back. So so they already own their own comic book brand, which I'm sure they're, trying to, invest in. And like, what's the point of promoting someone else's comic book brand when you own your own? So, but it'll be interesting to see what happens here because I don't know. It seems like there's a bit of information that we do not have that I think is the key to being, that's why this happened. And I feel like we'll probably learn that in the next couple weeks. And when we do, we'll talk about it on this podcast. Let's move on to another story, and that is the story about MPAA rule breaker, the house that Jack built, they had this unrated screening, and they have angered the Motion Picture Association of America. Chris, tell us about it.
Yeah, so I actually did not know this, but apparently the MPAA has this rule where you can't screen an unrated version of a film so close to when a rated version is going to screen. So what IFC Films was doing here is they were screening the unrated cut of The House That Jack Built for one night only this week. And then in a few weeks from now, in December, they're also going to screen the R-rated cut. But apparently those dates were too close for comfort for the MPAA. And in order to do this, IFC Films would have to sign a waiver, which they did not do. And as a result, they're in danger of being sanctioned by the MPAA. And it could spell a lot of trouble for them. It could get the rating removed from the film entirely. It could have other films of theirs be reappraised for ratings. All this stuff could possibly happen to IFC Films now because they didn't get the appropriate waiver. And on the, I say in the story, technically IFC Films did something wrong here, I guess. They broke the rule. But this is really bureaucratic nonsense on the MPAA's part. This is like Footloose, where John Lithgow tells the town they can't dance. It's like, look, just let it go, MPAA. It's really not that big of a deal. And another part of me wonders if this was even intentional, because the whole way they were selling the House of Jack built was, oh, look at how controversial this Lars von Trier movie is. And I'm wondering if IFC Films knew something like this would happen and they took a risk on it because they wanted more press for, look at how dangerous this movie is. But that's just speculation on my part.
I mean, you might be right. Like, seeing how the MPAA operates, like, they're not... have either of you seen that documentary from... I'm guessing it's the mid-2000s?
Kirby Dix, yeah, that one from 2006,
yeah,
I think.
This film is not yet rated, I think it's called.
Yes.
It's a great documentary. I look at the MPAA and like they are very vindictive, and really how they operate is very, I guess, shady. I guess.
Yeah, they're like con artists, basically. That's what the movie made it look like.
Yeah. We shouldn't say that they're con artists, but the movie made them look like con artists.
I said they're like. I didn't say they are con artists. Don't sue me, MPAA.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to play my devil's advocate hat here. I do see why the MPAA would want an unrated cut of a movie and a rated cut of the movie to be, to have time in between the two, because you're marketing one thing to a specific audience and being like, oh, this is okay for kids or whatever, and then you have this unrated cut that's, audiences could theoretically walk into not knowing that is the unrated cut, even though it probably says unrated cut and all the signs and everything. Okay, I've already talked myself out of this position.
And especially with the kid angle. I mean, this is a Lars von Trier movie,
Yeah, I was trying. It didn't work. Sometimes these devil's advocates just don't work out. But okay, let's move on. We're going to move on to our last story, and that is that the BFI is saying they won't fund any movies that depict villains with facial scars any longer. Ben, what is going on here?
Yeah, so, as long as I have been alive, and way longer, actually, the movie industry has used scars as sort of a visual shorthand for villainy in movies. I mean, I can't tell you the number of movie henchmen that I've seen over the years who have scars on their faces, and it's just like a quick and easy way for audiences to understand that this is a bad guy. But the British Film Institute, or BFI, is now trying to combat the negative stigma that's associated with facial disfigurement, and they have announced that they are no longer going to be providing funding for movies that include villains with facial scars. So they actually are going to be funding, I guess, going out of their way to fund movies that are sort of the opposite. They just provided funding for a new drama called Dirty God that focuses on a woman in South London who rebuilds her life after an acid attack. and that movie is going to star a new actress named Vicky Knight, who is a real life survivor of facial burning, I think. So this is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, it's look, nobody is saying that filmmakers can't make movies with villains who have facial scars. The BFI is just saying that we're not going to financially support you if you do that. So it's not a freedom of speech issue. I can already hear people, up in arms about this. I
but it is a funding issue here. So, I mean, is this a dangerous precedent to set?
I don't think so, because I feel like the BFI is a private organization that, that their mission statement is to basically promote the quote from their royal charter says that the organization was founded in part to promote their use as a record of contemporary life and manners. So I feel like that means that they have a responsibility, or they feel like they have a responsibility to reflect the world the way that it is, and that means updating social mores with the times. I feel like this is nothing but a good thing. The idea that I just feel like it's one of those things that people wouldn't have thought about 5 years ago or 10 years ago. People just wouldn't have taken into consideration the thoughts and feelings of people who have been disfigured, and the idea now that people are actually taking that into consideration, I feel like is a good thing. I feel like it's a right step in the right direction for society. But I don't know, Peter, are you actually playing devil's advocate here, or do you really think that this is a negative thing?
No, I actually think this is a very thoughtful thing to come up, and it's something that I believe all Hollywood studios should, consider when they're creating their villains. I guess my devil's advocate is when you kind of make the statement that no villains can ever have facial scarring, and it's like I know that this is the BFI, but what if Hollywood did that? I feel like that's a little bit restrictive. I do see the point. I'm sure people that have facial scarring have seen themselves and people like them be monsterized on the big screen. And I'm sure that comes from the fact that back in the day, if you had some kind of facial deformity, or even if you were in some kind of handicap situation, you were probably picked on as a kid. And then those kind of people rise up to, be like Donald Trump and be whatever. So I guess that's probably where it came from in the lineage of storytelling. But I definitely see I don't know, to me, a facial scar on a villain is just kind of cliche these days.
Yeah, that's part of my thing. It's if let's say that Hollywood just, actually that every major movie studio adopts the same rule. And what that means is that they would just have to come up with more creative ways to make villains, or to create a new visual shorthand for them to be villains or something like that. And I feel like there's not any bad aspect to that. But I don't know, Chris, what do you think about this?
It's tough because I can definitely see it both ways. I can see, someone growing up with a facial scar or something like that being upset by it. But at the same time, I really get nervous when people start censoring art like this. So I don't know. At the same time, I do want the world to be, nicer, for lack of a better word. I want the world to be a bit kinder. So, because I feel like the world is terrible right now. So maybe if something like this actually helps, maybe it is worth it. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, and I guess it's also important too, just to mention that this is one institution, and the situation I was talking about where Hollywood, every studio does it, that's not in play right now. And as far as we know, they're not even paying much attention to this. But I think right now it's just one organization that's not providing funding. So there are other ways. It's not like full-on censorship, because there are other ways for people to find funding, and probably even other ways from the British government, like the Film 4 and stuff like that. There are other funding initiatives out there that will probably, be able to supplement people and stuff like that too. So it's not necessarily like they're making a blanket statement. It's just this one organization is sort of taking a stand. But yeah, it's a good jumping off point for a conversation, I think.
Okay, so this brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. Chris, where can people find more of your work online?
I'm at slashfilm.com, and I'm on Twitter at CEvangelista413.
Ben, where can we find you?
You can find me at slashfilm.com, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ben Pearson.
You can find me at SlashFilm on all social media. You can find all the stories we talked about today linked in the show notes and on slashfilm.com. This podcast, Slash Film Daily, is published every weekday on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please feel free to send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to peter at slashfilm.com. And if you can, go to our iTunes page, give us a 5-star review, write a couple words, say some nice things, and spread the word. We'll see you on Monday. You know what this shows, guys? It just shows that Steven Spielberg is, again, a visionary. He gave a facial scar to the romantic interest in Ready Player One. Not the villain, but the hero's, no?
Okay, Peter, I can't believe you're bringing this around and trying to make Ready Player One seem like a great thing. Wow.
I just wanted to hear Chris groan, and he didn't do it. So
my mic was off. I was groaning inside.
I want to clearly state right now, I don't actually believe that. I was just making a joke.